and welcome to another Gnomon industry event. Now, I know what you're thinking. Chris, this is an interesting angle for you. I know, we're trying things out a little bit differently today, and I'll get more into that in just a little bit. But first, if you're looking for closed captioning, go ahead over to our YouTube or our Facebook page. We have that there. And we'd love to thank our sponsors, Dell and NVIDIA. Without them, we wouldn't be able to provide you such amazing content. Speaking of providing you amazing content, if you like what you see today, share it. Give us a like, tell your friends about it, have them check it out, because we're going to have an excellent conversation tonight. Now, tonight is really interesting because I know every time I do one of these intros, I talk a little bit about me and my personal life. But there was a little bit of a difference today because instead of there being a larger panel, there was only one person, and I got to concentrate all my annoying attention on one singular person. And so, I did that because this person and this company worked on some stuff that I hold very near and dear to my heart. And even though I am a comic book nerd that has evolved and has wanted everyone to get into comic books and love it, sometimes the gatekeeper in me comes out and makes sure and be like, well, Peter Parker in 1960 had an aunt that was so-and-so. And I must say that the presenter here was very on brand, really understood what they were doing, and I'm very excited to get into the conversation tonight. So please help me welcome Matt McClurg from Digital Domain.
Hello. Hello. All right. Digital Domain, yep, 30 years, 31 actually, who's counting? A lot of real fun stuff up there. I've been there for about 6 years now, and for all you guys who just want to kind of get an understanding of my background, I am the head of visualization for the studio. So that means I control and run and manage and basically create everything for previs, post-viz, tech-viz, set and stage, pitch. There's all these vizzes that I do, and virtual production as well. So kind of the integration between the stage and into that visualization pipeline and everything that we can do. Visualization, again, it's a template, it's a prototype, it's a blueprint that essentially allows you to see a product, a feature, an episodic, a video game, a commercial, before you've actually put it into production, before you've accrued any sort of cost to it. You can map everything out in a visualization, and that template is what kind of carries the production forward. There's a number of things that you can pull from that informatively, both the creative and the technical. So everything from the most excitingly creative blue sky phase to the nauseatingly boring like metadata you have to pull from the camera and put into production. It gets you everything. It is an absolute blast. I've had many opportunities to kind of sidestep into other walks, and I'm like, no, Viz is the place. But anyway, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So were you just like a young buck, 5 years old, being like, I'm going to get into pre-visualization one day?
Oh man, no, I'm older than that. But I'll tell you this. So I got into art school, just like so many of you guys, and I was like, hey, I can draw, and then I'm like, wait a minute, pen and inks, is that going to translate to something? I don't know. So I kind of veered course, and I got into animation. And I started doing animation, and I loved it. I wanted to find something a little more practical and logical with my skill sets at the time. And at this moment, this is late 2000, so 2008, 2009, and visualization as an art form and as a field had really only been around for about 4 years. I'm sure you guys all know. A lot of it kind of originated out at Skywalker Ranch. They were doing a lot of those early Star Wars prequels with rough layout and visualization, and it kind of expanded through there. And so at that time, it really wasn't like a buzzword. They called it layout more than anything, and it really kind of tied more into animated films. And it was rudimentary at best. It was a chess piece, as we call it, where you have these characters in T poses or A poses, and they kind of just shift around. And that's it. And you got your rough composition out of that. You got your timing out of that. You could build an edit out of it. So on those, again, very fundamental terms, it was good. Over time, they just found ways to expand on that, both artistically, creatively. The tech certainly evolved, and Viz evolved with it to the point to where the stuff we do now, as you guys know, it can be done in Engine. We have Unreal pipelines. We can make things with real-time renders, both proprietary and off the shelf. that looks incredible. You go, boy, that's a step away from final almost. And with that comes its own little can of worms rather. But at the same time, it has been an absolute blast. So I was lucky enough to I came to LA to get my first job. Right, I was horrified. I'd finished, I'd graduated, I had these student loans looking at me down the barrel of the gun. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? I got my degree. I think I did everything right. I did a demo reel. I did a thesis, even though nobody asked from it. I did the most amazing like interviews. I did these portfolio shows that looked like a Disneyland ride. There was like walls and like interactive features and I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be great. And then I was like, oh wait, I was living in Sacramento at the time. I'm like, I need to move to LA. I have to be there. I have to be in the heart of it. I need to go knock on some doors. And I did. And I slept on my buddy's floor for about 3 months. I got into a position where I could literally knock on doors. Like literally, I would go to studios and go in and talk to the administrators or the front desk and just say, "Hey, can I talk to you guys? Can I interview? I got a reel on a DVD." Um, and yeah, lo and behold, I got my first break at the third floor, as a lot of people in my industry have the opportunity to do. It's a great entry level position. They cultivate junior artists like no other, and I was in a great position to take advantage of that. Um, and then I was able to kind of leapfrog around a little bit, and I got to 20th Century Fox, where I was able to head up a few features there, including the early Fantastic Four, the Josh Trank version, Agent 47. I did some stuff for one of the earlier Apes films, and a few others. I then got pulled into Pixamundo, which was kind of where I was my first position to be sort of a head of a department and kind of build something. And that was building a pipeline. That was kind of managing the staffing, the budgeting, the billing, the scheduling, in addition to the creative. And that was certainly a challenge to I was going from just being on a box where my only responsibility was doing 2 or 3 shots by the end of the day to, hey, did you interview those 12 people for jobs that, And I'm like, oh God. So I did that, and that gave me the opportunity to kind of be in a position to go to a larger studio, something which is a little more big and legacy and fun and innovation, the Digital Domain Group. And I talked to some of the management there, and they enticed me, and they said, we got some magic going on over here. You guys want to be a part of that? And I'm like, yes, let's do this thing. And so I came in, and after a few years, my predecessor, the brilliant Scott Meadows, I don't know if you guys know him, the best out there. He's like, I got cooler things I'm gonna go do. He's very innovative, bright mind. He want to come create some new stuff. I can't blame him for that. And they're like, well, Matt, I guess that's you now. And so I just kind of sidestepped into that role a few years ago, and now I'm the head of visualization for Digital Domain.
And I gotta say, I never thought that I needed to see Spider-Man on a DeLorean before, but
you didn't know until now.
I didn't know until now. You had talked a lot about kind of your journey from or through in visualization. Was it always smooth? Was it always kind of just like you just happened to be at the right place at the right time? Were your parents always very supportive and be like, oh my gosh, you want to be an artist? Yeah, of course. We would never say that you shouldn't do that.
Oh my gosh, remarkably supportive, almost unnervingly so. My parents have encouraged me and my 2 brothers to literally do anything we want without reservation, without stipulation, without any regard for, are you going to get paid for that? Like they literally push us out the door with that mindset. Just to put it in perspective, I have 2 brothers. One of them is a captain of tall ships. There's only like 2 giant tall ships that run up and down the West Coast, the Lady Washington and the Hawaiian Chieftain. He captains and first mates those. He's like a pirate. Like that's, I didn't even know it was like a job, but he's been like on the open waters for like 2 decades now. My other brother, he's like a deli manager by day, and then he's like a stand-up comedian by night, and he goes to all the open mic nights, and that's his jam. And it's like in face of all this, like I know there's parents out there like, why aren't you a dentist, and they're like, no, this is great. Everyone's so happy, and they're not asking us for money, so they can keep doing what they're doing. And art was kind of like that with me. It was a very competitive industry. I think we all know that, and it's partially why I shifted out of animation. I just saw how hard it was just to kind of pull animation and find a course through that, whereas visualization was at the time still in its infancy. It was still kind of new, and they were kind of expanding and finding new avenues of that field. It wasn't just blockbusters anymore. It used to just be, hey, the big heavy blockbuster sequences, and then they said, well, you know what? We can connect the dots here a little bit. Let's connect A to C. We know what A is. We know what C is. Now give us the B. So commercials, video games, like I said, new media, themed entertainment. There's really nothing that can't use a visualization pass of some form, we've found. And so it's always innovating. It's always kind of growing and expanding in new and exciting ways. And thankfully, the tech allows it for that. It's so it's so iterative, right? It's kind of like these quick, rapid turnarounds of everything. Like, it's not Final Pixel where you have to kind of have like this very stringent and strict pipeline to adhere to. Viz is like, whatever, nobody cares what's under the hood as long as it's on my iPad on set. That's end of the day what we need. So it's always been a bit of a collage. We do things in Unreal, we do things traditionally, we do animatics, we do boardamatics, we do boards. I act out things. I'll throw that in the edit. Stick figures from a director. Often they're really big on their boards. They love drawing out their panels, and we'll incorporate those if we need to. That freedom, that creative liberty, is part of what makes such an appealing focus, I think. For me, anyway. I can't speak for everyone. Some people loses their mind, but I just kind of like just sort of the hodgepodge of everything from that.
Now, pivoting, that's
Sure.
a difficult thing to do, right? You were in animation and then you pivot over to visualization.
Yeah.
Was there any skills that you were able to transfer over? And then for anybody that's thinking of making a similar pivot of something that's coming up and they're like, oh, well, I'm trained in this, but I would like to get into visualization. Do you have any advice, or how was that really for you when you had to do that?
Visualization is, and always has been, and probably always will be, the best entry-level position for almost every facet of visual effects, if only because, again, nothing you're doing is Final Pixel. Nothing you're doing is going to be literally what they see on stage. It's going to be close. You have some side-by-sides. I'll play some later, and you're like, boy, that's close. But at the same time, you never have to be a finals lighter. You never have to be a finals rigger. You never have to be a finals animator. You never have to be a DP. But you do have to have a general understanding of all of it. And it's one of those jack of all trades that you have to just kind of understand the ins and outs of all fields, which I think benefits everyone anyway. But at the end of the day, you always have this nice little thing you can fall back on. Whenever you're getting lots of notes and a client's breathing down your neck, you can always say, hey, it's only Viz. It's only Viz. Kick it off to finals. They'll take care of it. You guys can make that leap, right? And I'd say 9 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, yes. Okay, good. So we'll end that.
So then, speaking on working on projects, right? They're going into finals and all that. You've worked on quite a few projects. Starting off with one, I think probably the most recent one that has gotten a lot of conversation over the past year or so is The Last of Us. So
Yeah.
with The Last of Us, working through that,
Yeah.
was there, even with that mindset, there are very notable characters and notable monsters within that. How did that project really kind of were there different processes that you went through? Did you have to have a lot of conversations to understand how important this show is? I mean, the sequel of that game came out from the same writer that wrote the first one, and all of the people that played the first game hated the person that they originally loved.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very fickle fan base sometimes. Did that pressure kind of seep into the team?
Less on the narrative front. I will tell you about The Last of Us, and we're well into season 2. Is that it is the most amazing, dedicated focus to the property of anything I've ever seen, and I'm speaking, first season especially, where they have such a firm understanding of the source material, better than I've maybe ever seen of an established IP. Where you have Neil Druckmann from Naughty Dog, and he's in the creative calls. He's there, and he's giving his pointers. And Craig Mazin, who's the Chernobyl like showrunner, like these guys are all brilliant, and they know exactly what they're working with, and they are not making it something it's not. And the attention to just the source material is it's exciting, and it's kind of inspiring to not pander or change or alter something. It is true to the show, to the game rather. The visual effects are incredible. The cinematography is beautiful. The directors they choose, they don't just pick directors off the streets. Like, these directors are like the most brilliant minds. I am so lucky to get to work with some of these groups. So yes, and to that end, if you're asking if like, yeah, if you know the stories, you know the stories, and yeah, we kind of whisper about that as we're mocking things up in our world, but we don't let it change our focus, which is to create a innovative and or not innovative, but an imaginative, exciting world that is as immersive as I've ever seen. I think episodically, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it, and even the smallest facet. It's amazing.
Is there an example without naming names?
Of course.
So with The Last of Us, it sounds like they're very hands-on. They can help you really throughout the creative process. Has there ever been anyone that's been like, yeah, here's some stuff. Can you just make it happen? How does the team operate differently with something like that?
Uh, so like if it's
Less
if,
hands-on versus very
yeah.
hands-on.
No, I mean generally it depends on the director, and a lot of times it is not a fault, it's by design, where they know story-wise what they want to achieve, and they have an outline, and we have a treatment, and we know where it has to start and where it needs to end, and maybe a couple of gags in the middle. But before you realize it, you're really only talking about 3 minutes of maybe a 15-minute sequence, and so we're in this awesome opportunity where it's like, okay, let's fill it in. What are some fun ideas here? What are some great things we can do? We were blessed with that opportunity actually. We did on Spider-Man quite a bit, and again, it was by design. We were in this very, very creative phase. This is during COVID, where we're all working from home. We don't even know what's going on, and we had the biggest sandbox where we were just coming up with new ideas, new gags, and it was, they were so receptive. It was one of the more collaborative experiences I'll ever experience in my entire life. John Watts was incredible. Kelly Port, production side visual effects supervisor, good friend of mine, incredible. All these guys were just there, and we're just like, it was like this communal thing, even though we were remote for like the first time. We had only just started going home. We used to be in front of a literal whiteboard with like 20 of us, and then we're like all in our garages, and we were like making the most of it. It was like this amazing magical time where like, you know what, it's not ideal, but we're still gonna try and come up with something special here. And that feature gave us the opportunity to do that, and I think it came out all the better because of it.
Very cool. So working with a lot of visualization for people that might want to know a little bit more kind of in depth, what does visualization inform in the creative process exactly?
Yeah, so if we're lucky, we get a script. More often than not, we don't. There's a treatment of sorts, an outline. Typically, sometimes we get boards. Often they kind of leapfrog boards, and they say, well, you know what, let's get into the viz right away. You guys are fast. We have a very fast team. We'll get into that. But it's like, boy, if you guys can output 3, 4, 5 shots per day per artist, is I mean, that's in a world space. We have a much better understanding. It's not two-dimensional. We actually can know, the world we're living in here. We have a layout. We can move in that space. We can get reverse angles extremely quickly. And so when we what was the question?
So what does visualization inform
Oh,
in the
my
creative
God.
process?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. You were tucked in, so I was just kind of letting you.
I apologize. So, in basic forms, it's the edit of whatever it is you're doing. There's a lot of technical things you can derive from that. There's the composition of the camera. That is first and foremost. You tend to work with a DP or cinematographer. You frame the shots however it is you need to. You want to make sure that there's, editorially speaking, that there's a good eye trace or a juxtaposition between shot to shot. So that's essentially editorial. So you work very closely with an editor in that sense. And so that way you're doing these individual shots, but they're never one-offs. You always want to see the string out and see how they flow. And there's a lot of back and forth in that. We inform pacing, timing. We inform the actual camera. So we tend to have a bunch of metadata that can be exported out and published with our camera. So it's not just me pie in the sky framing up a shot and saying, okay, have fun, do that. There's a phrase, it was on the little reel, tech viz. Not the most exciting thing, but essentially it's the practicality of the shoot. So we can always do the beautiful blue sky phase where it looks amazing and everyone's applauding and crying, and then like, oh, that's right, we have to shoot this in Atlanta next week. How are we doing that? And that's where we can provide sort of these orthographic views to show how you do it. So it's called tech visualization, but frankly, you need that mindset at the pre-production phase as well. It saves you time. You don't want to do angles and moves with a camera that can't be achieved later. You get that with seniority generally with artists who just have a more grounded sensibility for camera language, and the directors they work with. We tend to know, dolly track lengths. We know how fast grip tricks can usually go. We know crane lengths. We know, stage space. We can bring in. Oh, you're doing Pinewood 32, okay. And now all of a sudden we kind of know the set that we're kind of working within. The last thing you want to do is go too far down a path where it cannot be replicated. You have to redesign it with those limitations in place because you just spent 2 to 3 times on a shot that you shouldn't have had to. So revision is, you want to keep your revisions down in our world. But we inform everything to that end. I've informed wardrobe. I'll go back, let's see. At Fox, I did the Fantastic Four, the thing, and the Doctor Doom in that one, he had this cape, and I was doing full passes of the edit with different lengths of cape to inform wardrobe what the cape needed to be, and to ensure that cape flying wouldn't affect the composition of the shots or the moments in the background that they needed to see. It wasn't CG; they wanted to do it practically, I believe, and so we actually had to, which is funny because like we were doing like Sims on a cloth anyway. Like it wasn't ever going to be practical in our world, but they were using it very informatively for their shoot. Lighting. Here's a crazy one. Scheduling of cast. You can tell them, you know who you need and when based off an edit. So if you can get by without, paying an A-lister to hang out in a trailer out back because they're not needed for a sequence, and you can see that, then you take advantage. If we're not saving productions time and money, we're not really doing our jobs. So that it is creative and as fun and as imaginative is what we do. There is a very, very grounded, logical, practical side to it as well.
So going back a little bit, you're talking about making sure that everything that you do within the previs is physically possible as far as like filming is concerned. Obviously, not like jumping and landing on a DeLorean from an Iron Giant, like the dolly speed and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
What's the importance of that? Can you speak a little bit on that? On like why do that? Why make sure that these camera angles are this way if it's going to be mainly CG or anything like that?
Well, if it's going to be CG, then yes, there's the freedom there. And often is the case, they'll do it and they shoot it and we have a plate, and then it just doesn't work and ends up being CG anyway. But we tend to know that ahead of time, and we actually help will inform that. The visualization, previs in particular, is done in years generally. We start years before we get in front of cameras. And so we have that ability to kind of manage uh, uh, costs, practicality, just the tech that would be required for it ahead of time. And we found that the older, the more experienced the artist, the more they know that every shot can't go flying through a keyhole, as cool as that is. Every shot cannot go 240 miles an hour. Every shot cannot be some eagle's eye, top-down view, shooting over a city that doesn't exist. We need to kind of bring it back down to earth. And that's really what comes down to understanding the filmmakers and the clients, really, the production that you're working with. So often our team will go through the filmography of the people we work with just to have a really good understanding of their sensibilities and their language, and making sure that we kind of incorporate that into our projects. It's never more evident than when you have a director or a production that's very personal, and you can tell they're very subjective and very intimate with how they film things. And often you'll do this big elaborate set piece that you're very proud of, and it seems to fit the mark of what you understand this brand to be, and you're like, oh, this is amazing, this is a trailer shot if there ever was one. And then, but the director's like, well, no, that's not this. This is not that project. This is not what we're doing here. And on the surface, you're like bummed out. You're like, oh, what? That was great. That was awesome. That was a trailer shot for sure. That was my demo reel. I was gonna put it up here. It's gonna be amazing. And they're like, no, that's not our movie. And you kind of have to put away that pride early on in our field. And it is pride. It's not vanity. It's not an ego. It's pride, where you do this work and you're so proud of it, and you should be. Frankly, it's great. But Viz is without question the most iterative process in all the departments. I think on the Spider-Man thing, I think we have that. It breaks into like a grid, right? And it's the hybrid fight sequence between Doc Ock and Spider-Man. We went through 94 edits of that, and I don't mean quick fixes. I don't mean like change his suit color fixes. I mean narrative changes, and at the end of the day, it's like your first thing's like, well, why are they so indecisive? How does that work? That doesn't make any sense. That's not productive, and it's the opposite. We found that in Viz, if we do something for these productions that doesn't work, that is just as helpful to them as doing something that does work, because we're telling them something that does not work cinematically, that does not capture the audience. More often than not, they know better than we do. We are not behind all the closed doors with these guys, and it's so quick to be like, they don't know what they're talking about. The Viz is, that was where it was. They know what the end game is. They know what they're aiming for. They know the response they want to get, and I know I can talk about this because Kelly Port showed it on the Corridor Crew, where he showed the high bridge scene, and there was a scene where Green Goblin was there, and he's very much involved, and it was online, so I can talk about it. And that was very much a big piece, and we did multiple versions where there was like a three-way fight. You have two octopeds. You have Doc Ock with 8 arms. You have Spider-Man in the Iron Spider suit with 8 arms, and you have a flying component, this other character. And oh my gosh, it was the most amazing thing. It was the coolest stuff ever. And then they're like, we're cutting it. Goblin's out. And we're like, what? Are you insane? What are you thinking? And we're just like banging our heads against the wall. But they were right. They were right, because if memory serves, you have a third act where Peter is in this very dramatic confrontation showdown, losing May, fighting Osborn, and how much of that weight would have been lost if he had just fought him an hour earlier in some comical CG way in the first act. It would have taken everything out of it. And that's a perfect example of how often they know exactly what they're doing. We can love our shots. I think I did on Spider-Man, we did a little over 11,000 shots, new shots. Over 18,000 iterative or versioned up from those. So 11,000 unique shots in that. There's only about 1,800 in the movie. So that gives you a general idea of how many things exist out there in the digital nether that just weren't meant to be. But good ideas never die. Maybe they'll show up elsewhere.
One of our instructors here, by the name of Jared Kraszewski, does have a nice saying that is, don't fall in love. Don't fall in love too much with your work, because there's always going to be some kind of adjustment that'll come through.
Absolutely, never more evident here. Like we lose entire movies. I've done an entire movie, a year and a half, and it was a page 1 rewrite. So it's not just like a tweak on a shot. It's not a reframe. It's not a wardrobe change. It's a, hey, thanks for that movie. Let's do a different one. So yeah, it's a gut punch for sure. But I don't know. For something about it, I like the pain, I guess. I don't know.
A little bit
Call
of
me crazy.
masochist in
Yeah, a little bit,
pre-visualization, huh?
yeah.
So you're talking about a very rare circumstance of having a lot of different iterations because obviously artists they paint something one time or come up with an idea and then that's it and it's perfect the first time that they make it.
Hmm.
I'm obviously joking. Um,
All the time, yeah.
so what's the average amount of shots that you kind of run into usually for a lot of this pre-visualization stuff for the iterative process words?
Yeah, well, about let's see, about 3 years ago. And this was kind of widespread across the industry. All vendors would generally do this. It was like kind of they said like, oh, every artist, a shot per day, will get you in, and they would just kind of bid it. That's how they do bids, and that's how they knew how the staffing and the team size. And I said, well, that just seems a little vague. I feel like first of all, artists can do more shots than that per day. I feel like that's just the quality artist, the leadership of the artist, the experience level, and so we really strive to get quality older artists who really understood. And then I said, I feel like we can break down these metrics a little bit more. And I said, what really is quantitatively what makes our job longer? It's not the shot output. We average about 3 to 4 shots per day with our team, which per artist, which is abnormally fast. The biggest thing is revisions, as you put it. And so I actually started doing this little equation. Sorry to get nerdy, but it's basically our shot revision index, where I was able to track how many versions per artist per shot it took to essentially get those 3 levels of approval you need to get like a buy off to make everybody happy. And that's usually your first tier is your visual effects producer supervisor, right? You got to get them happy right out the door. Then you get up to a director and they got to make them happy. And you think, oh, that's the end of the line. No, that's not how it works. You have a whole executive team who has to give their buy off above that. And so once you get those 3 tiers, then I kind of put a little thumbs up on it, or I basically block it off. I would remove any aesthetic changes. So again, I'm going to lean into Spidey just because I did like 3 years on that. He changed his costume a lot. It's like, oh, it's the Iron Spider. Oh, it's a black suit. Oh, it's just an inside-out version of the red suit. Oh, it's an actual, it's the suit from like Spider-Man 10 years ago. I don't know. We had to redo edits where that was the only thing we changed, or sun direction, something simple like a light study, right? And so I didn't feel that was fair because that was not on the artist who did the shot. That was on a directorial change or an art directive change after the fact, and I didn't really put that into the equation. So I looked mostly just at the shot's not correct, the action's not correct, it's not the story. And so in doing all of that, I'm almost done, guys. In doing that, I found that we had a shot revision index of about 2.8. So we were under 3 versions averaged across about 20 projects over the last 3 years, which is insane when you think when things get into comp and anim, you see these version counts that are astronomically high. Version 172, and we were able to keep it globally under 3. A lot of that has to do with the director, where they're less iterative of what they're seeing and they just want to see new idea. That tends to increase your shot count but not your version count. So I try to put all those factors in just to make it fair, because that's how I was able to understand who was the most productive, not in a good way or bad way, but who is in a position like, okay, this person's take some 5 or 6 or 7 shot versions to get the shot out. Let's look at it together. Let's see what aspect of this are they not grasping. And we look at it together and say, hey, you know what? I think I understand what this is. Here's some great online tutorials regarding shot composition. You're cropping off at the head all the time. You're creating tangents that don't need to be there. A general 2-shot, you want to frame it like this. You're doing a lot of back and forths. Your camera's dutching. You don't have to do that. Don't roll cameras for no reason. We find what it is and we try to bring that version count down. And that's kind of how we apply it. So it was amazing when I showed that to some people and they're like, that's amazing that you kind of broke it down that quantitatively. We usually don't. We usually just kind of go over and over and over again and throw things against the wall and see what sticks, and that's often how Viz is done. And I just said, there's got to be a more productive way. There's got to be a better way to kind of streamline this process, at least at the earlier stages. It's not in your face. There's subtle suspense and noise and sound or lack thereof is so instrumental. I'm a huge proponent of sound in viz edits. Some people are like, you don't need sound, it's distracting. It's just about the visuals, and I wholly disagree with that. I think the more elements, sensory, you can put into a viz edit, the better you're gonna have an idea of that finished product. So I'll die on that hill. I get people who are like, you don't need sound, you don't need music. And I'm like, let's fight, because I think we need that. And it drives. It's kind of it's a chicken and the egg, guys. Because again, when you get into that tonally, the audio and the sound design, it helps feed what you're creating on the visual front, and then there's this beautiful little yin yang of creative output.
So speaking of that yin yang and Viz and all of this,
Yeah.
how informative can Viz be to the final product? And so like
Yeah.
you're talking about all this, you're getting all the beats, your editor is amazing, everything's awesome.
Yeah.
And so how can you really inform that final piece?
Well, eventually, it's not my problem. I'd love to sit in the editing bay until they're like, "That's a wrap." Let's go to the red carpet. But eventually, my job ends. And it creeps up to premiere time generally on small little fixes and things, but we tend to help out wherever they need to. Our speed helps in Viz. So when they're doing edit and things are already well into final vendor territory, they may need to make a narrative change. They may need to make a tweak, and they're like, well, it'll take 3 days for this vendor to do it. Or hey, Matt, can you just knock this out by lunch? And we do, and they throw it in edit and they make sure it works, and then they can port it out. So. We are very informative. At Digital Domain, they're also like very big on ensuring that at least our viz that we do, at least in-house, and it's not always viz to final in-house. We'll do viz projects that Digital Domain's not doing finals on. They certainly do finals work that we didn't do viz on. But when you are lucky enough to get that crossover, and it does happen fairly frequently, we're really big on creating a pipeline that sort of allows that information to carry over and to go from the finals, or the viz rather, into the finals. We have a UI that allows us to kind of do that. We have a publishing setup that allows us to do that, to help retain all that animation. All the metadata from the camera can go over, everything can scale, goes into world space. It's all kind of ready to go. It's great on things like post-viz, where you're doing set extensions and vehicle placement, things like that. It pipes over like a dream. So often in Viz, we have tools to get it into the finals pipe in less than a day, and they can build off that. And to that end, we really, really try to keep that in mind to make their lives a little easier. Doesn't always work out, because at the end of the day, we got to kind of do what directors want. But if there is a world to kind of have our cake and eat it too, and hit all that, hit the friends and family screening on Friday, and produce a product that can go into Viz or into final, great. We're making everybody happy. That's what we do here. We make everyone happy.
I have a very random question.
I love 'em.
Just because
Do
I'm
it.
so curious. That's a lot of data that you all are working through all of the time. Are you all responsible for your own file management, or do you have somebody that's dedicated to managing all of that? I mean, all the versions, all the different
All that.
scenes,
Oh my
and
gosh.
all
Yeah.
that stuff.
No, we have a brilliant TD who helps build our pipe, and very receptive. And he kind of takes notes and he builds out. We try to automate as much as we can out of this. That makes the most sense. At the studio prior, we didn't really have a pipeline. More of it was manual than it should have been. It was like, yeah, it's just Windows. What's the name of that shot? I don't know. Let me type it in and see.
Matt McClurg V2
final
underscore
master for sure.
semifinal.
Yeah, it was. We're kind of joking, but I'm not too far off from that. We had like a rough naming convention that we adhered to, but more often I was kind of like, we're just gonna shoot from the hip on this, guys. This is the Wild West of Viz. And it wasn't until I got to Digital Domain where I'm like, oh, so this is a pipeline. So this is what you want to do, where it like auto publishes, and it knows how to separate work files from published files, and that way the versions are different, but it slates it all differently. So you're not working off somebody's work file. It should have been a master or publish, and it keeps all that for you, and it's so organized and so intuitive. We all the slate, all the metadata there in the HUD, we don't have to touch it. I don't have to deal with that at all. Literally, it is in a nuke comp and a node that just puts it all up there. So all you have to worry about is the creative, which makes our life a whole lot easier because you don't want to be fiddling around making sure the date is correct on some export. And so yeah, we really lucked out there. We have a number of really cool tools. We have really cool animation tools that I'm a big fan of. We have great nuke comp tools. We're a nuke house, by the way. It originated at DD. I don't know if you guys know. Nuke came from Digital Domain. Originally, it was Nuke for new comp software. Nuke, they shortened it. So it's a nuke house. And so even in visualization, as much as we like to kind of lean into Adobe stuff, and it's more easier for us and simpler, they're like, use Nuke. It's cool. So we have all these little nodes in Nuke that we use for comp and templates, and it kind of elevates the look. I will tell you this. People are like, oh, well, you use Unreal, right? You're using engine stuff for all everyone uses engine, and we don't really. We can. We have a pipeline for it, and we will if it's required. But we kind of created a lot of look elements in our general pipe that mimics that. Gradients and ramps and volumetric lighting and ray trace looks, and we can kind of pipe that in. We have these little LUTs packages that we can put in there, and it looks very comped and final. We have little film grain nodes to make it look like film. It's all fake, but we do that because at the end of the day, we want the fastest output, and traditional Viz is and will always be the fastest output. Rather than trying to pipe it through engine, at least we found. I'm not saying there aren't pipelines that maybe have streamlined that to the point to where it's like single artist, in, out, done. I haven't seen it yet, but we really kind of lean into what we deem to be the fastest, most efficient for the team we're working with on the render side, of course, is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was curious about the file management just because there was so much of it. I have a question for you all here. How many of you are artists? Any artists in here? Great. Okay, let's all be honest for a second. How many of you have a very organized file management system for all these stuff? One person. So there were probably like 20 people that raised their hand, and then one person was like, "I'm actually organized." So that's why I was curious if you had. I would love if your TD wants to come over to my house one of these days. Organize my
Clean
files.
it up
That'd be
for
cool.
you.
Oh my gosh,
Absolutely.
please.
Yeah, no, really. I shouldn't have to go into any folder other than the dailies folder.
Yeah.
Really. There's hundreds of folders, but I don't know what they are. I'm not going to go into the config file to go check what the lens package is for that camera. I assume it's just working.
So we talked a little bit about publishing the scene files into Final Workflow and that creativity and technical data. Did you have an Orville side by side that you could show us? It says right here, but is that?
Oh, that was in the video.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's okay. You can move. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
It was
awesome.
in there. The battle stuff.
But then you were also talking about Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
So there's Unreal Engine 5, which is a new piece of technology, but there's all kinds of new tech coming out now. Is there anything that Digital Domain is utilizing right now that's new and on the edge? Anything really cool?
Yeah, thanks for asking. The newest thing that we're really proud of, we have this Masquerade software stuff. This is more final, to be fair. We kind of get like the more stripped down versions in our Viz, so we kind of see what they're developing. Brilliant minds, this whole committee of brilliant minds, and one of the big things that Didi's excited about is motion tracking, facial mocap. And more often than not, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but you had to put little dots on people's faces. And for those tracking markers were kind of a pain. For starters, if you have an actor coming in and day out, you have to do those dots again. And it's not always quite in the same place, which means you got to do a lot of cleanup. Never mind the fact that you have these actors coming in, big actors. You got Josh Brolin coming in, and he's got to sit there and put dots on his face for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then all of a sudden he's kind of in a bad mood, and you're like, are you even getting the best performance now? And they're like, there's got to be a better way. Yeah, they've developed some amazing technology. I think there's a demo of it on the site. I think they put it out there, which is it's a markerless facial mocap system. So actors can just show up and just do it, and it's all captured in camera. It's real time. It looks amazing. And what we do is anytime they come up with something really really cool on the final side, we're like, hey, how can we get like the poor man's version of that? And we try to like find ways. So like we try to think of ways to incorporate head mounted cam or facial stuff into our previs. Just so you know, in Viz, it's like a sin to try to do like lip sync because we're not finals animators and we don't have time to do it. So it always turns into a Fraggle mouth, and it's like this like flapping gums, and it's like that's all you can look at. So like never animate a jaw. I don't care if we can. Don't ever do it unless you're like the most brilliant animator of all time. Um,
And even then.
and even then, you don't want to do it. You do not want to be looking at it. We are not doing voiceover work in our viz. You can do a scowl, right? We have like you can do like a furrowed brow. That tells the face that you need. But they do not need to recite their lines in Viz. But if there's a way where we can pull in like mocap data, if they're shooting it already, and we can put that onto our rigs, that's kind of cool because it is the performance technically. There's no distraction there. So we're always trying to find ways to kind of bridge that gap technologically speaking between the Viz pipelines and the final pipelines. Because there is a bridge there methodologically speaking. Like what we're doing here and what we're doing there is not apples and oranges. It's very similar. Our workflow is different. It's faster, but anytime that we can cross that, get that tech threshold to kind of connect and find that nice little conduit, we leap at that opportunity.
So that begs the question. So let's say you get the mocap data, you bring it in, you're prevising a whole scene, everything's cool. Is there any point in time where, let's say that somebody's reacting to something and they turn and everything's laid out that they only turn kind of one part of their body, and somebody on your team goes, it may make a little bit more sense if we just added this little shoulder movement or something like that. Do you have any of that kind of creative freedom to submit what they asked for, of course, but then also, hey, we thought maybe this would kind of look cool possibly, or is that not?
Absolutely. No, how you do this, it's a very diplomatic approach, guys, is when you're asked to do something, and this would work for your example, this works for almost any example. You got to do what they're asking. Now, you may have every thing in your body is like that's not correct. That's not what it should be. And as subjective as that may be, it is, maybe you're correct. To which case, you can always submit an alt, and you can always send that with your daily. So it's like, here's what you asked for, here's another option, and you put it in front of them. And sometimes that works, and sometimes they're like, what the hell is this? And then you better be in a position to explain. But more often than not, as long as you delivered what they were asking for, they can't get too angry at you for just putting in a little extra time for a modification. We do it quite a bit in Viz. Viz is actually the most easy and accessible way to do that because you're such an early phase for action and blocking and ideas, really. I mean, like I said, a lot of action and ideas come out of our camp. They know what they want narratively, but we can come up with some really, really cool stuff in the middle, and that's the place to do it. It is the proverbial sandbox, as they always say.
Yeah, because that seems like that would be one of the biggest pats on the back that you could give yourself when you go home, when you like submit
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
you were like, oh, this makes more sense, and they were like, you know what, Matt, that does make more sense.
Yes, exactly. And here we keep a little running tally, our team and I. We have ideas that we'll mark down when we do them whenever it goes well, and they keep it, and it's in the movie. So I'm up there. I have another guy who's pretty damn good, and he gets good ideas out there. I can't say the ideas if only
Right.
because a lot of people take credit for the ideas after the fact, and you don't want to throw shade or undermine anybody. So whether or not it's your idea, that's just for you to hold on to. Say that was my idea, and they may say it's their idea, and they may have done paint overs for a concept art book or something to make it look like it was like some, way back when. No, but yeah,
It's
it's
just so
fun.
you can,
It's a fun little game. It's just for us. It's just for us, so we know what we're doing.
and so you can tell your friends, you're like, oh, that was my idea, and they're like,
I
sure,
can,
Matt,
yeah, as
sure
long as
it
they're not
was.
like videoing it, I can tell anybody. I'm like, hey, I came up with that. I came up with that idea. And it's big stuff, guys. It's big stuff. It's like the biggest crowd cheering moments sometimes. It's not just like a fun little background gag. It's like the moments that make people cry in the movie. Like, it's very, very fun to have that freedom and that liberty and to be taken seriously if you ever do pitch something. That's the one thing about it that I'll never take for granted in our world is it's like we have this position where it's like we can just give ideas for movies like a fan. Like, hey, be cool is if this happened, And it's like more often than not, we're always just kind of like saying that to ourselves or saying it to our significant others in front at dinner, talking to our kids, we're playing with our toys, I don't know. And you're like, oh, that'd be cool if this could happen. But we're given like this little podium where we can kind of do that, and we can throw ideas into the fold. We have a little more creative clearance there than we probably deserve. But no, it's certainly not something I take for granted. And to be brutally honest, that's partially why I love Viz so much. Is you're in this position to really explore that world, whereas in finals, you're more executing what was decided on. So it's like it's more the execution to making sure it looks perfect, which is great. But it's like I kind of like being at the beginning where you're coming up with stuff and maybe it's wrong. Like I said, 18,000 shots in Spider-Man and there's only like 2,000 in the movie. So there's a lot of wrong ideas, trust me. You got to be okay with that.
So you actually kind of struck onto something that I talk about a lot. Working here at Gnomon, one of my favorite things is just being able not only to be a part of these events, but seeing all of these amazing students come out of here. I'm a huge fan of all of this stuff, of everything that you work on, of everything that they work on. I'm in a fantastic position to just be here in awe and also at the same time not get kind of burnt out on it, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not working on it all of the time. You just alluded to saying coming from a perspective of a fan, you can see things differently and see pre-visualization differently and kind of suggest things. How do you maintain being a fan while also working on this stuff? I know that that's kind of a weird question, but some people they see this as work, right? And over time it kind of dwindles and they're like, I'm gonna cash in my check and then I'm gonna leave. But how do you
Yeah.
maintain really still enjoying everything and then going to work and still having that little inner child being like, I'm freaking working on Spider-Man right now. Like
Yeah.
this is awesome, and getting really frustrated when they take out Green Goblin. You're like, how could you? You're not my dad.
It's better than digging ditches.
Yeah.
You know what? It's an artistic field. Anybody who gets into that field had the passion there at some point. I can't imagine somebody going through to art school and being fascinated and inspired by something and recreating it and finding their own path in their career and just being at such a artistic and just foundationally like imaginative position and then kind of losing that drive. I think it's always in there, and you got to kind of tap into it. And so yeah, I get it. We work with some older artists, and they get a little curmudgeony, and they're just like, I hate this. But at the end of the day, they had that drive and they had that passion. And if you ask them their favorite movie, they would give you their favorite movie, or their top three. And I don't think anybody gets into this stuff who isn't a fan of some kind. Now you are going to work on certain IPs that you may not be such a huge fan of, or just don't know anything about. I've been lucky to work on some pretty big IPs, some stuff that people are very, very fans of, and you have to kind of it's fascinating. You gotta. It's a labor of love, but you kind of have to separate the job from the feeling you get of doing it. If you can drive one with the other, more power to you. But you shouldn't be, lying. If again, I'm just making this up here. If I'm working on a Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and I'm like, hey, that's this shot. Check out page 37 of issue 12. Look at the front. Look at this. This has to be the shot. Like sometimes that goes over, sometimes it doesn't. Yes, you're a fan and you're showing your passion, which I think is awesome, and you should always have that. But at the end of the day, it's like it's not a comic. It is a movie. There's things to consider here that you don't have to worry about in a paneled page, right? Like there's there's pacing, there's timing, there's again juxtaposition of shot to shot and everything. You have to kind of have those sensibilities in it. I'm a big fan of a lot of the stuff I work on, and I know a lot of people are fans of the stuff I work on. I'm not saying I do it on purpose, but like if I wear like the crew like Marvel sweaters to Disneyland, and if I'm in line, people are like, "Ooh, did you work on this?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll tell you about it." You know, it just happens to be what I'm wearing, guys. I'm not. Yeah. Um,
I have so many of these in my closet. I just pulled this one out
it was
today.
just exactly yeah.
Laundry
No,
day.
Like, oh, yeah,
What could I do?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point with the comic book. I have a point that I bring up to my daughter a lot, which is you don't always have to push up your glasses. And what I mean by that is when someone says something, you don't have to be actually right. You can just let
We have
them
some
say
of them.
yeah. Oh, try. I have been there.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on certain things, but and then also curmudgeons. Funny enough, this is something that I talk about. You know, you say maintaining that childlike wonder, right? For a lot of stuff that you create, maintaining that fandom. One of my favorite people to bring up with a lot of that is Hayao Miyazaki. So he's a famous
absolutely.
director. He is a curmudgeon in his own right, and all of his films are talking about how when you're a child, everything is beautiful and wonderful, and then you grow up and you stop seeing all the beautiful, wonderful stuff. But because he's so mad about it, he's been creating all this beautiful, wonderful stuff for so long, and it's been it's just a very unique take on it. So I think even through hating it, there's a way that you could still love it.
It's a brilliant take, but it's one. The luxury of that is he has his own creations and he has final say in almost everything. Whereas so much of the times you're working with IP and you may be really passionate, excited, and fanboy about it, but then it has to go through so many layers of approval that you have to just kind of know that in the back of your head that no matter how excited you may be about something, the tiers of approval can water it down. It can amplify it. You don't know where it's going to be after you've touched it, and that's never more evident, in like a lot of the big blockbuster machines out there, because they're piping hundreds of millions of dollars into this, not just for production but marketing costs and everything. And they do these screenings. They want to reach as many demographics, as many people as possible, and you can't fault them for that. Of course, it makes perfect sense. So, when we're in a position where it's like we just want to reach as much of the audience as possible, you have to embrace that. And it it may not be what you saw on page 36 of issue 12, but at the end of the day, it's like, hey, listen, they want to make a really good movie here, and they want to make people happy, and if they're going to do that, they're going to do it their way, and you just got to be on board and support however you can.
Hey, and if they hire Digital Domain, they're already halfway there. So
there you go. Nice plug.
So we're actually going to get into Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand. I have somebody in the back here that's going to be walking around with a giant square. It is a microphone, so we have one right over here. As they're migrating over to you to hand you the mic, even if you have the mic in your hand, if you don't have it, you can raise your hand. He'll put you in kind of like a mental queue. But we'll start off with this question. We've been talking about being a fan, working through all this stuff, everything. What was your pinch me moment? What was the moment where you're sitting down throughout your whole journey and you just have something in front of you and you're like, wait, am I actually working on this? Is this actually happening right now?
Good question. Two.
Okay.
Maybe two quick ones. Don't
No,
worry.
no. You can please. That's what we're here for. We're here for you to tell us.
One
stuff.
is the first job I ever had, and that was at the third floor, and I was a bright-eyed junior artist. I had my little bow tie on. I was like, oh boy, let's go do this. Let's make some movies. And I didn't even know what I was working on. They just sent me off to Culver City, some random studio, and like, hey, go to room 3. That's where you're going. And I'm like, what? Okay. I had literally no idea where I was going, who I was meeting, what I was working on. And I show up there and I go in, and as soon as I walk in, there's like this amazing like maquette model of the drones from Oblivion, the Tom Cruise Oblivion movie. And like my head just exploded, like, oh my gosh, I'm on like a movie set all of a sudden. Like, am I in front of the camera? I don't know. I'd never done this. I'm like, are there people like looking at me? And it was not just the production office, like an art office. Like, who cares? There's like, key art on the walls. But to me, it was like already I was in Hollywood, like, hooray for Hollywood. And I was like going in and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? Because I didn't know what that was. And they're like, okay, hey, hi, I'm, Soup and coordinators and blah, blah, blah. Sit down. Go ahead and start looking at edits. Get caught up to speed. I don't think they realized how junior I was. And they thought I like knew what the heck I was doing. I was still like, is it QuickTime or RV? What am I doing here? And I started watching it, and I was like, oh, wait, that's like that's Tom Cruise. Cool. It's Tom Cruise. Like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And then this guy came down and started like pointing at the monitor next to me, and I was just kind of like frantically like, okay, who's this? Should I know who this guy is? Like, am I gonna have to talk to him? I don't know who that is. And I kind of like pocket phone IMDb. Oh my God, it's Joe Kaczynski. It's the director. And I'm like losing my mind. And that was like all the first week, and I was just like, this is so incredible. And I'm not saying I lost the muster, but like that, I will never feel that high again. Of just kind of like being so inundated with filmmaking. We all grew up watching it. We all loved that stuff, and this was my first job, and it was this big movie with arguably the biggest star in the world, and I'll never forget that as long as I live. The other one. I had the amazing opportunity not to meet in person and talk in person, Frank. It was a Zoom, but he did look at me in the eyes and wave and say hi, and we talked a little bit. And that was with Spielberg on West Side Story. I got to do the opening scene of West Side Story, and they were out shooting in, I believe, New Jersey, in some big empty lot. And there was the opening where they're building the Lincoln Center in New York or something, and there was like all these big wrecking balls, and it was like the opening of the film. And I'm a big musical buff, actually. My parents kind of grew me up on musical theater. I know Broadway, I know all these things, and I used to watch, all these Irving Berlin things and Leonard Bernstein things and West Side Story. And so I was like totally like caught off guard. I was so excited. I was going to do the opening with the little whistle and everything. And I got to do like 2 or 3 little Zoom sessions with him while he was shooting, and I'm like, this is incredible because Raiders of the Lost Ark's best movie ever made. And now I'm talking to this guy, and he's there with us. He was like wearing a fedora. It was like the coolest thing. And that was the most amazing thing. I totally screenshotted it like a total nerd, and I have it. I have a photo, and I'll look at it sometimes. And I'm sorry, I'm just like all you. I was very excited.
Nice. Well, let's hope that admission doesn't turn into a restraining order. That you have that just on your.
No, it was okay. It wasn't like I was filming it and like we were working, we were having conversation, but I got a screenshot where he was waving goodbye, and I was also kind of waving goodbye, and it was like a perfect thing, like we were like waving to each other like from across the country, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're awesome. Anyway, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. So I think we have a question. Yeah.
Hey, what's your favorite movie and what are your top 3 films?
My favorite movie and my top 3 movies?
Yeah.
So same question, just one. I could just do 3 then, right?
Yeah, you mentioned it
Okay. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Back to the Future, and Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, Back to the
I could
Future.
go to 10 if you wanted.
Okay.
Those are like the mainstream ones. Then I get a little deeper. I'm like, oh, I like Amadeus and those two, but like we'll just go with the ones I watch the most.
Just as a quick aside, whenever my coworkers say that it's 8:10 in the morning, and then I immediately go into when Marty was in the garage and realized that he was late for school.
Damn, I'm late for school.
I'm late for school, and then the power of love starts turning on. My coworkers absolutely hate it because then I just recite it pretty much into the point where the lady's begging for the change at the clock tower. Save the clock tower! And they're like, Chris, come on, not again, dude. That's like the 5th time this week.
You just keep going through the
Oh my God,
movie.
it's one of my absolutely favorite movies. It's what I call a chicken soup movie.
Yeah.
So like when I'm feeling bad,
Absolutely.
I turn that movie on, and it's so good.
I'm with you. I can do every single line in Fellowship of the Ring. I'm a Lord of the Rings guy. I saw that movie I think eight or 9 times in the theaters, and my buddy and I could recite it, the entire thing. And I know that sounds like the most nerdy thing ever, but I don't care. We did it, and it was great.
I hate to call them out right now, but somebody on our admissions team, Adrian, is just as tough into Lord of the Rings.
It's the best.
Oh my gosh,
They're
I've
doing a
asked
Gollum
to.
movie just announced today. I just saw like the Hunt for Gollum. Andy
There's
Serkis
so much
directing.
lore too, which
Yeah,
is
that's
just really
exciting.
deep into it. Okay, we'll
And just so you know, Back to the Future, if it's coming to Pantages, the Broadway show is coming to
Is it?
Pantages in November.
we should go together.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So sorry, we're glad we got another question back here, and then we got one there,
Hi.
and then one up here.
Hi there. So, a lot of what Digital Domain seems to work on is a lot of like blockbusters and superhero movies.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, if there are any kind of either projects you have seen or hypothetical kind of projects that you would like to see more of. I guess outside of the superhero and blockbuster kind of genre.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really, really good question. I'm a big fan. Here's the thing. You're right. Viz generally gets kind of like lampooned, like pulled into blockbuster stuff, superhero stuff more than ever. I would lose my mind if I could do some fantasy stuff. And again, I don't want to go back into the Lord of the Rings, but like my God, if I could do like I know they're gonna do like a Zelda movie eventually. I'm not working on it, but if I could work on that, I would lose my mind. Like there's certain like genres that just sound so fresh and exciting and cool, and that's the type of stuff I used to draw, frankly, before I got into animation. As like I was drawing dragons and elves and stuff anyway, so it's like that'd be like full circle. Is if I could somehow in my career get into something that's just like way into that zone, I would be a happy clam,
Or Happy Dragon.
happy dragon.
I think we have one right here.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like fit and finish of Previs, like for different directors. I was going to mention David Fincher, but since you have talked about working with Spielberg, it seems like he's someone that you could get to your finals a lot quicker, not necessarily have to have a really finished Previs, and
Yeah.
compared to some other films you've worked on and/or directors.
Ooh, that's such a really good question. In terms of finish, because that's big. I think at the end of the day, most productions, directors included, like to get their ideas quicker. If they can get it quicker, they will forego some of the polish. It's not to say you can't do both. In fact, we go to great lengths to make it so that polish is automated and layered on whether they want it or not. We don't do grayscale. We don't do chess piece animation. It's quicker for me to throw a run cycle onto a character than to literally put two keys and have them slide out without the animation. So there's really no excuse to deliver subpar work aesthetically. There are some directors who actually don't like polish. They would prefer to see their work, their ideas presented in a way that makes most sense to them. There are a number of directors out there who will board their own work and they'll do their own storyboards, and they really lean into those. And they see Viz not really as an extension of that, but more sort of a detriment to that. And it's really about the focus and vision of those directors. I like to make things look pretty personally. It's actually pretty painful if I have to deliver something and I haven't done like a depth of field pass or thrown in like some hardware fog or some atmospherics. That stuff kind of hurts me a little bit because I know I can make it look better and I know I can do that fairly quick. So to answer your question, it is up to the directors. More often than not, quality is steered by the VFX supervisor, though. They're kind of the conduit there, and they are very quick to tell the director what to expect from any sort of deliverable. They'll be like, hey, now don't worry about the lighting here. What do you think about the pacing of this? What do you think about the set design? What do you think about the layout? Are we seeing the right background set pieces here? And they are actually very good. It's actually one of their best jobs is they go in and kind of caveat for us, because I don't talk to the directors every day, guys. Like, as cool as it be for me to just be able to text them right now, like, hey, what do you want about this? There's a chain of command. There always has been. We'll do our reviews. We'll all be in the room together. But no, I don't get numbers of we don't talk over coffee about what we're working on. VFX soups are the masters there, and they are the ones who are kind of like take this information, they deliver it, they're the conduit for most of that, and they caveat wherever they see fit. In a perfect world, you give them work that they don't have to caveat. If we do that, then we did our job. It makes them look great. Everybody wins, and that's always my goal, is to just have them so he just sends it. Just sends it, hey, here's the new viz. Not, hey, here's the new viz, but ignore this and change this to this and modify this thing here and forget about that because it's bad. Then I didn't do a good job if I have to bullet point all the things you shouldn't like about it. Hopefully that answers your question. Hi.
Hey, how's it going? Does Digital Domain do any virtual previs, like with like VR goggles for the volume or anything like that, like they did for Lion King and other stuff, or is it
We have,
more
yeah.
storyboard?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. We do. We have a virtual production. We have a stage, a huge stage. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it. You acted on it. Dave Hickey back there, he's been on it. But basically, it's we have a huge volume, a stage. It's 65 feet long, 35 feet wide, 20 feet high. They have 122 Vicon Vantage V16 cameras, 122. That's actually a lot for stages. Typically they have 48, they have maybe 72. They have 122. And it's like, well, who cares? You're just buying more cameras. No, it's about occlusion. It's about how many sets you can build on stage and in set, and how much occlusion there is. So the more cameras there are, the more sets you can build, and there's not going to be any sort of interference or anything like that. So as far as virtual production stuff, yes, it was a virtual production stage first and foremost. It was Bob Zemeckis' building. Jim Cameron got started there. I mean, you guys saw it in that first reel, like these historic things. Mars Needs Moms and some of those earlier works, Beowulf and Christmas Carol, I think. All those Bob Zemeckis movies were done in that stage. They kind of veered out of it a little bit. Ready Player One was the last big one to go through there, but even then they did most of that stage work in London, I believe. In fact, I think they rebuilt the exact stage in London, like down to the square inch. All the truss work was the same, everything was identical, so they could just easily port back and forth between LA and London for that shoot. More often than not now, they do a lot more video game cinematic type work. And as far as VR, AR stuff, yeah, they're very big on hologram type work. They've done a lot of, I think there was some again in the reel, I'm trying to remember. They do a lot of the hologram musical venue projects, where you'll see, Tupac back from the dead and all these characters up on stage and it looks incredible. And we have this cool little demo. Oh my God, I just found this out. So, like, the stage is the stage. We're always out there. I'm always seeing it. But they have this whole little, like, hologram setup where it's all, like, controlled lighting. And I swear, I've been there for 6 years. I didn't even know about it till, like, 3 months ago. And they're able to demo, like, this little hologram setup in this viewing angle. And he's like, it was just a test, but it was like Pikachu running around. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing. How long have we had this? And apparently they've always had it. So I'm even finding new things about Digital Domain. That's how deep the innovation goes.
That Pikachu sounds awesome.
What?
The Pikachu sounds awesome.
It's like a test footage. It's just to show like how the backwards projection mapping on the thing and just the viewing angles you can achieve. So it's like where we test, and yeah, we do all sorts of really cool venue projects. It's a new media department, and it really kind of backs into like stage venues, concerts, stuff for the big Vegas sphere, things like that. Really, really cool. That's where a lot of the new tech goes, frankly. It's less in the more traditional, like Viz. It's like, we can put more tech into it, but it's kind of tried and true. The real thing is more experience, right? That's kind of where they want to kind of incorporate more immersiveness, I guess you could say. And that really goes hand in hand with the evolution of technology I've found lately.
Cool. So I think we got one right there.
Yeah, hey, I got a question. I'm curious about your workflow that you use. It might vary on different projects. But when I first built my first previs, I built an environment. I dropped in the characters. I kind of modeled the action. And I start dropping in the camera angles.
Yeah.
And then, I'm using one specific angle for one specific shot.
Yeah.
And then cut to a different angle that'll be, show the next piece of action in the sequence. But invariably, every time I render it out, then you're looking at the edit and you're like, God, I wish that one shot had been a little bit longer, or man, I wish I had like that same angle. In other words, do you render out the entire scene with each camera angle?
Or do you kind of do it shot by shot and then wish, if you want to make a change, you have to then go back to your project and render it back out?
Well, the way you explained it, listen, first of all, to each their own. I have no problems dictating or really kind of micromanaging somebody's specific workflow so long as they're delivering. But having said that, I've found that doing master animation files and then putting cameras on it is a tedious way to work, if only because if you do make an offset, a change in the animation as a performative change, it would be chain reaction to everything else down the line. If you're putting multiple cameras in one scene file, you now have to adjust accordingly. To that end, I'm a bigger proponent of individual shot creation. So you animate what you need to that camera, and then you animate further for the next camera, and so on. Rarely will you need to get back into a master file unless it is for a motion study where they need to kind of dictate like overall layout of a space and where a character goes throughout the whole scene. A light study can often do that, and sometimes tech viz will require that. So they need to there's some sort of technical stipulations to figure out where characters are and when and what they need to do for rigs and things like that. But no, I am very, very big on individual shot creation, because then if I get a note on a shot, I open up that scene file. I don't have to sort through multiple cameras that are all feeding off each other in terms of coverage. That gets messy pretty quick in my world. Yeah, it's handles are a little more big on the back end for finished finals editors and film editors, I should say. We have to get the action out generally. As the action's there, then we can cut it, and we will kick it back if we need a few extra frames here or there. It happens, but 8-frame handles at most I would do. And it's not like a mandate. I don't do the animation and say, oh, I gotta add 8 frames at the head and tail now. I just do it.
So don't message you and say, I did the 8 frames.
Yeah, no, because they don't even know where in Viz they don't know where the shot technically begins and ends anyway. At the point of head and tails and handles, it's already gone through so many cuts that they have a general understanding of where that shot needs to cut anyway, so that it makes sense they do have that extra padding there. In our thing, we're coming up with shots in action, so we're kind of dictating what the length of the shot is. We're not really conforming to what it needs to be.
Cool. I think is there one back there? Yeah.
After so many years in the industry, what was your favorite project to work in and why?
That was like the one question that was like an obvious question I was probably going to get asked, and I didn't even really think about it.
Well, you said working with your best buddy Steve was pretty good.
Best buddies. We waved at the same time. It looks like we're just like hand to hand.
Yeah, that's why you have only fedoras now.
That was incredible, if only because, again, I grew up with musicals and West Side Story in particular. I'm a huge fan, so the opportunity to work on that with such an idol was life-changing. But it wasn't that long. I feel bad using it when I was on it for like a month maybe. It was just for the one scene. I just, blood, sweat, and tears. It has to probably be No Way Home, if only because, like, again, we were on it. I was on that thing in November of 19, and I don't think it came out till December of 21. So over 2 years, which in our world, that's a chunk of change right there. And when you think about how much we had to go in and how much we had to do and the finished product and then to see how excited everybody got, and just the cheers and the hoots and the hollers, listen, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I watch theater reactions on YouTube of people getting excited about stuff. I'm like, oh, I made those people so happy. That's so awesome.
That was my scene.
Yeah. Look at those people like on their feet. That is so cool. And it really makes you really appreciate the world you're in. And then in our work on to be fair, our work on Spider-Man went so well. It really opened up the door because we hadn't done much Marvel until that point. And since then we've worked on 7 projects thereabouts. So it really kind of put us as a viable option creatively for them. They said, "Hey, you guys did great. We love working with you. Nothing but good things. Here's some other opportunities. Let's do some more stuff together." So you know, double-edged sword. It's great having those opportunities, but then yeah, I think the other question is like, it's a lot of superhero stuff, and it is a lot of superhero stuff. But you know what? It's why they make movie theaters, is for things like that. It's why they do it. And so just to kind of be a part of that, and know that you're kind of creating something that has to be experienced and enjoyed in a venue like that, with other people. It's a very communal experience, and to know you're a part of that is very rewarding.
I have a quick question before we get to our next one. In my opinion, I think that Spider-Man is the only superhero that has multiple iconic suits. And what I mean by that is there's the traditional Spider-Man suit, there's the Todd McFarlane Venom suit, right? And you could throw some other suits in there, but the only other suit that I would put in that caliber would be Miles Morales' suit. You could say that Batman with the short ears is iconic. You could say that Superman when he got rid of the cape, whatever. We can debate outside. I promise I will love that conversation. But I believe that Spider-Man, he's the only three that if I go to somebody that doesn't know anything about comic books, they can name at least 2 Spider-Man outfits. That's a lot of pressure and intense. I mean, that fandom is really, really serious. And again, it bleeds out of just the fandom that people can say, yeah, Spider-Man's colors are red and blue, that know nothing about comics. How do you deal with that kind of pressure, which I know that you're in Previs, right? But it's still it's a big deal. It's a big character. The movement, even, if people see that movement, like how you said that was a version 1 of the shot, that's really having to understand not only the mechanics of the Iron Spider suit, but also that, this is the dude. I mean, this is Spider-Man, right? This is not some offshoot guy.
There's yeah, and I'll tell you what, Spider-Man in particular has to kind of adhere to that fandom more than most. And I'll go even one step further. No Way Home had to adhere to it more because it wasn't just backing into the comic lore. There was whole cinematic versions of these characters already that they also had to pay tribute to, both in aesthetics and legacy and everything. And it wasn't just in terms of just sort of like this overarching vague tone. It's like, no, it's literal the plot. It's multiple Spider-Man. Like there was like the attention to detail to kind of, it wasn't even paying an homage. It was like, it wasn't even respecting the material. It was doing the material. It wasn't like some sort of like, oh, this is an homage to what was there. It's like, no, they're all there. You got to do it right. All their suits are different. All of their swings are different. How they land is different, and you have to achieve that and deliver on that. That was one of the few times where we really had to go back and study, even on the visualization side of things. And a lot of people think, oh, it's just viz. We actually had to kind of go in and make sure that their swing styles and their landing styles and their general posing matched that of those original cinematic iterations, the Sam Raimi films and the Mark Webb films, and then of course John Watts' version. It was a challenge, but one that was incredibly fun to do. I really, really actually liked having to do some deep research. Often we'll get a project where it's like, we don't really do the research. Not that we don't want to, but we don't have to. And for some reason, that just has a little less meaning. No, I won't say meaning. That's the wrong word. I don't know the word I want. Somebody thinks of it, scream it. But it was like, it's like where you don't feel the inherent need to go back and really study that language and that sensibility. And I prefer to do it. I do. If we have an opportunity to do that, and I try to pull people into the studio and watch it all together, I'll do that so we can kind of like bounce ideas. Hey, look at this. Look at this. Yeah, it's not just IP based too. It's genres. It's genres. I think you mentioned like The Last of Us in general. It's like, there's a lot of genre work there that we can kind of tap into and look into for inspiration, not just the game, but other content as well. And we really strive to do that. My team above all else. I think we love doing that, in fact.
Yeah, you even mentioned Errol Flynn, which there's no
deep cut. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know of a modern version that will help students understand that reference, but swashbuckler.
Yeah, so yeah.
That's the best. I don't know modern day swashbuckler.
Yeah, I'm a big old movie buff. On the older stuff, Princess Bride is great.
Yeah, it's modern-ish. You know, it's a great movie. Don't get me wrong. I think they're both great films. And Princess Bride is fantastic.
It was Princess Bride is actually incredible, and we studied the fencing in that as well. But I kind of kept going back to the Errol Flynn kind of David Niven fights, and I really kind of just thought there was something just so cinematically grand about that. In fact, my wish, if I ever make a movie, guys, I understand that there's a billion Robin Hoods out there, but I want to like do a version that kind of captures the charm and whimsy of the Errol Flynn versions. I'm tired of the gritty reboots. I would literally put them in color tights and like oh, Technicolor's new. Let's really inject some of that in there. Like I think that is like ripe for remake. Like I would love to do that. But I really did pull into that. I look at old movies. There's like they used to do like TCM movie film festivals. There used to be a noir festival over in Hollywood. It was like the best thing ever. I don't think they do it anymore. I used to go with a buddy, and they like the Egyptian and the Arrow would have like these old noir films, and I eat that stuff up. And I try to bring that in actually. And again, not to get too crazy, but like I'll actually look at like lighting techniques and film grades and contrast in that and try to pull it into templates in our comp. It's very subtle, but it does look different and it does help. And anytime I can sort of inject that sort of like that nuanced aesthetic from old film into Viz, whether or not anybody asked for it, I do it.
I do it anyways. So we have another question over here.
Yeah. So at Gnomon, we've had some really cool demos on like real-time and in-camera effects. We had some people from the TED show come and show us how to like use their software on like on-set stuff.
Yeah, cool.
How do you see like previs and virtual production kind of like blending or merging or overlapping? Because I know you kind of touched on that earlier.
Yeah.
And how is that happening? Just curious.
It's a great question. It's a fantastic question. Yeah, more often than not, they're in a position where we want to kind of start seeing the Viz process on set and on stage, and they want to see that incorporation and that integ earlier, so they know how to react to it, how to compose to it, how to act, how to light it, and all these things. So, okay, I think they called it. Okay, somebody else was talking to me that's outside. I think it's Provis. I think it's what they're calling it. Okay, was it? It's a good friend, Brandon Fayette, who I think he was on Orville, and I was on Orville with him, and it was kind of in its infancy, that AR kit that he was developing for spaceships landing and stuff, and it's all in camera, and it's very, very cool. And he ported that over to work on TED, so there's always the teddy bear was always there in scene. And what really elevated it beyond, and again, I haven't talked to the guy in a few months, but he's great. What really elevated it beyond just like a standard, like, oh, we all have these little like off-the-shelf LiDAR like AR kits online, is like it can port out all that data to like any camera, and it can like be all seen in camera. So it's like, oh, we have an Alexa Mini, we have a Sony cam, we have a Red, whatever it is. All those focal length lens packages, all the technical film backs, the sensor sizes of all these cameras, it takes all that data that's shooting in frame in real time and actually allows it to be seen in the proper context and format, which is huge. That's amazing.
Insane.
It's insane. And I assume that's what the demo you guys saw. I saw it like several years ago when we were like testing it. In fact, like we were playing with it like on a set where it was like a docking bay of the Orville, and we're like having the shuttle come in and land. I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing. And it just kind of evolved since then. And it is very intuitive. And it's very nuanced, and it's an amazing tool. And I haven't played with the newest iteration. I'll give the guy a call. I'll play with it. But the bridge, I think, is there. Previs is so early. It's like before you even get the actors on set, you want to be able to figure out what the blocking eventually will be. The set viz is where you can kind of start incorporating that. It's more of a technical thing. It's really kind of allows you to frame up the subjects a little bit better. I am due to give the guy a call. I think it'd be a lot of fun to talk to him again, actually, and kind of see it in action. But we have stuff similar in our world. We don't employ it too much in our space. We do some sort of set viz where we can kind of put in mock extensions and things like that. That helps them sometimes. Real time like wire removal and things on set. We don't delve into that too much. Not to say it's not great. It's just sometimes they don't need it. we're kind of big on doing what people want, and they'll tell us what they want, and then we kind of back into that as best we can with our toolkits at our disposal.
So Gnomon isn't just a college; it's reconnecting colleagues.
Yes, I'm gonna call
Like,
him right
I'm gonna
after
give
this.
him a
You guys,
call.
yeah.
Great
Assuming
job.
that's who was here, I'll be honest. I wasn't even sure. This might just be really embarrassing. I think it was here.
We got another one right here.
Hi.
Hi.
I like this box. It's like the Batman vs Superman
It's like,
box.
it's like a tesseract or something.
Yeah,
It's
Tesseract.
weird.
That's
This
Yeah.
is super
yeah.
weird. I don't. Sorry.
Wicked.
Okay. I wanted to ask about work-life balance. I want to direct and do my own stuff. How is it possible to kind of keep working on your stuff if you're working at a place like Digital Domain? And you spoke about wanting to also make your own films. Is that something you still want to do? But yeah, work-life balance in terms of following your personal dreams and then also just like life, friends, stuff like
So
that.
we should break that up into 3 questions. So we'll start with work-life balance with just Digital Domain and your overall life.
Yeah.
And then I think the next one, as you mentioned, was your personal work while working at Digital Domain, and then just how you kind of do all that. So we'll do
Yeah.
work-life balance first. So working at Digital Domain and balancing your overall life. How's that
Yeah,
work?
yeah. It's extremely balanced. Listen, at the end of the day, when you look back, COVID brought everybody home. We didn't know what was going to happen when we got that call like 3 weeks into March of 2020, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to go home," and everyone's just kind of like, "Are we going to be working here in like 2 weeks?" Like nobody knew, and just the amount of technical fortitude to get something to work remotely was mind-boggling. We were like staying up all hours to try to recreate our pipelines from home. How we're going to transfer files? How can we transfer files securely? You know, I can't, Google Drive, Spider-Man's new costume to somebody, you know. And it's like, okay, so we had to find all these little secure ways to do everything under the watchful audit eye of all these big major studios. And amazingly, we were able to kind of like hack together this way to work remotely. And this is not just a Digital Domain story. This is everybody's story. This is all vendors did this. They all, Dina, MPC, ILM, we all had to do this and find these amazing ways to work remotely. And we all hooked up these, remote render farms. We all did these Teradici setups. We go work, off different workstations and I couldn't even tell you the ins and outs of how we were able to do that because we had to. We had to do that, and in doing so, it worked so seamlessly. There were no hiccups. Like amazingly, outside of a couple little security snafus at random times, everything over the last 4 years has been almost as seamless, if not more, from our homes than in studio. Did you lose the communal aspects? Absolutely, and I miss it dreadfully. I want to incorporate a hybrid just for our team, just a couple days in, come in. If you moved out of state, so be it, fine. But like if there are people who are in LA, come on, just come in. We can throw ideas around just like I'm doing with you guys. This is so great. I couldn't have done this online if I was looking at my own face on a webcam. I'm so happy to be here. This is where ideas come from. And doing that, we were working from home and it allowed me to be there to put my kids to bed, which was amazing to me. I don't think you guys understand that pre-COVID, when I was saying goodbye to my son, it wasn't like I'll see you tonight, it was I'll see you tomorrow. And that was every single morning. It was like, I'll see you tomorrow. Every single time. And that's like, but it was the norm. Like I almost didn't even think about it then. That's the life I'm in, that's the industry. But then remotely, all of a sudden I was in my garage, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, I put the kid to bed every night and be up there the next morning. And I will never take that for granted, how amazing that has been. And it allowed us to have this great work home life balance, to your question, that we had never had before. All of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm going to take my lunch at 2 and then I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to go go watch the kids baseball game. That was never an option when you're commuting an hour and a half and you're just like, I'll go to Taco Bell. That's my lunch. And all of a sudden you had all this opportunity. And here's the thing about that. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because yes, you are working from home, but you're also living from work a little bit. Because now all of a sudden you have your box is always right there. You know, the kids are in bed now. I could just go and do a shot. Do I really need to be in bed watching, Vanderpump Rules, or could I go do a couple shots? Because here's the thing, guys. We love what we do. I'd be doing shots unemployed if I could. Like I like doing it. It's hard and it makes my hand hurt, but it's really fun. Animating zombies is fun. Doing space battles is fun. And so as freeing and as amazing as it was to work from home, I was there for all the great moments, but I also had the opportunity to go out and play at night and go do some extra stuff without the watchful eye of dailies calls and director calls. I mean, we're on a lot of calls, and if I can go out there at like 11 p.m. and not do anything, and the only thing I have to worry about is like the raccoons outside my garage that are looking at me, like I'm all about that. It's so peaceful. Oh my God, I get so much done. So to answer your question in the longest way possible.
There is a second half to the question too.
Oh my God, what was the other part?
The second half was you had alluded to it a little bit, that you enjoy what you like doing. You like making zombies. That's fun to you. You would do that for free if you could. So,
Yeah.
do you have any time still for your personal
My own
work,
personal
your
projects?
Errol Flynn modern day swashbuckling movie? Which now that I think
No.
about it, it's kind of crazy. Oh no, okay.
What was crazy? What was crazy?
No. I was just saying that I can't think of a modern day, and how cool would it be to have some kind of.
I want to
modern-day
embrace filmmaking
swashbuckler?
from late 30s. I want to actually, like it's the Bible for the shot, the production, to actually have to like conform to the limitations of that time. I think that would be so incredible. So it's like, yes, it's like a modern take. It's a contemporary project, but what if you actually did have to like study just like the production design of that time, where the characters were wearing makeup that was probably giving them cancer, like it's like and everything like not that, but having to incorporate like all of those wild things. Like if you had to make a Singing in the Rain today, Wizard of Oz today, but with the exact same everything. We're gonna go to the law. We're gonna go to the old MGM, the Sony lot, and build it out there. I think that'd be so amazing. It would cost a fortune, and nobody would go for it, but I love that idea. To answer your question, I do not have time to do my own personal pet projects. Now, that's not to say I couldn't. To be fair, I am the head of the department, so that does give me a little more responsibility. I'm not only on the box doing shots with all the other artists, I'm also supervising the show. I'm involved in all client calls. Most people below me would not need to be on all those calls. And then I'm also doing all the administrative management side of the department as well. So I'm staffing, scheduling, budgeting, all those things that I wish I didn't have to do, but I have to do. So I, to be fair, have a lot more on my plate. I do know there's many artists I work with who have that opportunity to do their own projects at home, and they do, and they show me them, and they're incredible. And I've seen some fun things, and they have fun. They go on Blender, they go on Houdini, they do some sim work, they do some really cool animations, and that's great. And they have every opportunity to do that. I don't force anybody to work, ghost hours and at all hours. It is your own discretion. If you're having fun, you want to do it, do it. But there is no expectation ever. I never force anyone in a million years to do something like that. You do your day, your 9 to 6 with your hour lunch, and I'll see you the next day unless you're really having fun. And I often am. I'm having a good time. So.
Cool. Then we have another one right here.
Yeah, actually, I have like two questions.
Uh-huh.
And my first question is like, give your team enough time, do you think they can deliver like final shot quality work? Or putting another way, like, what do you think in production and post-production? What do they do like so important that is like irreplaceable? What is that part? And my second question is, like the recent movie, the Godzilla -1, they're directed by like Miyazaki and a pretty small production team.
Very.
And my question is like, with your skill set, do you think you have like the capability of doing something like that? Do you think that happened to winning like an Oscar for visual effects will be a future trend for like people have skill set with like Previs,
right,
and within a smaller team.
Yeah, there's something to be said for smaller teams. For starters, I'll start with the second question because I couldn't remember the first. The second
I wrote it down
question.
for you.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to that one. Yeah, it's an incredible film. I've seen it. Hopefully you guys have seen it. It's great. It's so well done. And as you guys all know, the director of that film was also the visual effects supervisor for it, which is incredible because it does two things. Number one, they understand what it is they're trying to get in camera right off the bat. They can apply all their visual effects sensibilities and those knowledges into the shoot. There's a handful of directors out there that are extremely good at doing that, where they come from visual effects backgrounds or production design backgrounds or art directive backgrounds, like Joe Kaczynski, Wes Ball. Those guys are incredible, and they have such a great sensibility. They know all the softwares I do. They go in and they could adjust shots if they want. They know engine. They know all these things, and when you have somebody who knows that, is it for starters, it cuts back on production time, visual effects time, because they know exactly what they want at the forefront. They know what they can achieve. They know what the budget is. They know how long it takes to do something. So they know that up front. They'll say, I'm not going to have time for that. I know for a fact. Not often directors don't. They kind of pie in the sky like, I'd love to do that. And they have to kind of fiddle around, and 3 weeks go by, and they haven't seen a final render, and then they're like, they haven't done it. So there's a lot to be gained from having a director who understands all facets of production, visual effects, most importantly, considering that's such a big share of your production budget.
So then, that being said, do you think that with your team, you would be able to do something like that?
Like a final.
Yeah, all the way to final, right? Because you mentioned that
could we
it
do
would be
that?
even possible to get it all the way to.
Yes.
Yeah, I like it.
Yes, but with fewer than 13 or whatever he had. I could do it with 8. No, I'm kidding. You know what? Yes, no. We are knowledgeable enough, and we understand the visual effects pipeline enough that we can incorporate that into it. I'm not a director. I'm not really good with actors and being able to direct on stage. I'll direct our mocap shoots, so I do a lot of motion capture on stage, and I can certainly do that. But like the ins and outs of production are it's a lot to do. It's the most hard job in the world. I've been there. I've seen it. I kind of like just doing a little more behind the scenes. I mean, I'm not going to say if an opportunity wasn't there, I wouldn't consider it, but I've never felt like this itch to direct personally. I would rather just give the director lots of ideas and then see them come to fruition. So like I'd be like the little devil on his shoulder, like, do that. Do that. And then he's like, sure. And he says yes to everything I say. And then yes. And then he does all the hard work. And I'm like, great. Now I get to see the movie I want to see. Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit about the industry outlook and kind of the nuanced position of visualization in the industry right now?
The future. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of, the elephant in the room. There's all sorts of generative stuff, right, out there. And the best way is to kind of work in conjunction with all the new technologies that are growing all the time. And this, we, by its own definition, Viz in particular, but visual effects really, is very fluid. It evolves. It changes. I'm reminded of one of my mentors who had the most amazing two-dimensional 2D background in animation, Disney in the heyday, mid-90s. And he just, and then when 3D came around and they started weeding out the 2D, he learned 3D. And I think that's always going, that mentality and that sensibility is always going to be kind of prevalent in our industry. It's not just mediums, it's technology. It's how ideas are processed. It's how they're executed. All of these things are forever going to change, and for the better. And I am a firm believer in sort of embracing that and familiarizing myself with that and creating tools and methodologies that work in conjunction with that. And the more you kind of come in open-eyed to a lot of what's out there, it's not scary, it's awesome. And it's so exciting to utilize everything that's growing so rapidly. And yeah, so that, I mean, I know that's a very, very mealy-mouthed answer, but that's kind of my outlook on technology. We're always finding better ways to do stuff, and we won't stop to find better ways to do stuff.
And do you think that digital domain is kind of keeping their finger on that pulse?
Yes. Yes, we have we are constantly developing and creating new tool sets and workflows that adhere and can work to sort of just the more. Yes, we have a committee in line. We're building things and we're doing things and we're incorporating things. Yeah.
Awesome.
And to keep it short.
So we're going to end things a little bit differently tonight, but first I do want to thank you for coming here. Everybody, if we could give Matt a great round of applause. We're going to, well,
awesome.
Yeah, I'm sure if anyone here has any questions that maybe Matt has some times for you here, but I just want to let anyone at home know you can go ahead and subscribe to us to catch all these awesome live events that are going to be coming up. You can follow us at Gnomon at Gnomon_school. And if you have any questions about what Gnomon can do for you, please visit us at gnomon.edu. But you, Matt, you have something else for us. One final thing that you were going to show us.
Oh, yeah, if we had time.
Oh, yes.
I do have the Spider-Man Visceral, because I brought it, because I'm really excited about it. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I don't think they're very excited about seeing it. Oh.
I will play it.
Well, then we'll end tonight's event on this amazing reel.
On
Matt,
this excitement.
thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. This has been an absolute dream. Thank you.